Thank you, Mr. Ruddock. I'd now like to call on John Morse, Consultant to Indigenous Tourism and past Director of Tourism Australia. Thanks, John.
Hello, everybody. What a great group of people. Thank you all so much for coming. And I would like to start by acknowledging, of course, that we are on Aboriginal land, the Eora Nation, and to echo the words of the Premier of New South Wales at the Jimmy Little Memorial service at the Opera House a couple of weeks ago, who I know many of you were there, when he said, to the delight of all the Aboriginal people present, always was, always is, and always will be Aboriginal land. A very big round of applause the Premier got for that statement. I'd like to share with you a few of my own thoughts about where Aboriginal Australia is today from the perspective of a very, very privileged and honoured white fella who has been embraced by Aboriginal people and the culture all over Australia, and in turn a culture which I have embraced much to the enrichment of my life beyond anything I could have imagined 10 or 15 years ago, and just share some thoughts with you, which may seem disconnected, but they're not if you think about them. I'm going to let Adrian Newstead, my friend, talk in more detail about the art, because he is, and he will be embarrassed, but he is, I regard, one of the foremost experts in this country on Aboriginal art. I will make a few comments towards the end of my short talk. I want to share a couple of thoughts with you about next weekend, which of course is Sorry Day, and a very, very important day for all Australians. And when the then Prime Minister Kevin Rudd made the apology to the stolen generations, it was, I believe, a profound moment in Australia's history. And all the Aboriginal people that I know across Australia, many hundreds, that I spoke to about this, there was a universal theme coming through. It may not be everybody's view, but the view that I was getting very strongly, that the apology was never about recrimination. The apology was never about litigation. The apology was Aboriginal people wanting white Australians to acknowledge the truth of what happened and to cry with the Aboriginal people and to share their pain. And I think that happened in a way that is starting only now to become evident. To back that statement up, I want to share with you some research, very briefly. I'm not going to get into statistics, but some research was done 1 year after the apology, right across Australia, with 1,300 Australians. And the research indicated, firstly, that 82% of Australians admitted to knowing very, very little about Aboriginal culture. No surprise there. 84% of all Australians think it is important to learn about Aboriginal culture for reconciliation. What an extraordinary figure, 84%. But the figure that sent me to tears was the fact that 92% of all Australians think it is very important for their children to learn about Aboriginal culture. And I think that's an amazing figure and signifies that, as Bob Dylan said, the times they are a-changing. However, in my view and the view of the Aboriginal people that I work with across this beautiful country, they're not changing quickly enough. And I still think we have two worlds in this country. We have the Aboriginal world and the non-Aboriginal world. And to give you an example of that, and pardon me if I become a little emotional, but 2 weeks ago, a beautiful, beautiful woman who I regard, and many other people here and overseas regard, as one of the finest artists in this country, passed away in Yolngu in northeast Arnhem Land. She was a healer, she was a great artist, she was a leader, and a profoundly important woman. This week there is mourning right through Arnhem Land. And yet, did you see any stories about this in the press? Was it announced to the people of Australia, and how many people actually know about this? And I find that quite sad, and I won't say any more about that. There are two worlds, and sometimes these worlds collide rather than connect. And my work with Aboriginal people and the work they've asked me to do in developing cultural tourism across Australia, they see as profoundly important, and I see as profoundly important, because tourism is one way in which they can share their culture. And I find universally the generosity of spirit of Aboriginal people in wanting to share their culture with Australians is powerful, and it's quite extraordinary. I think every one of us has a responsibility to make that connection, every single Australian. And if we do, as Flanagan said a couple of years ago, what an awesome country we would be if we worked together and if we walked together. What an amazing country. We still have a long, long way to go in this area, but I think we are on the pathway.